What's up, and welcome back to Nowstalgia Pod, giving you another week of what's going on in pop culture. My name is Pat Sheehan, joined by the crusty and the trusty co-host Dave Martin Swagger. Dave, how you doing today, man?
No, this is Patrick. How's it going?
Actually, no, I'm Patrick. But regardless, usually these early pods, we're like, scraping bottom of the barrel. We're like, oh, we're gonna go see this crappy January movie just to have something to talk about here. No, that's not the case. The content gods have been good to us so far this year.
Yeah, it's unexpected. Not not anything I'd seen coming just generally. And then when you think about not only are we having things to talk about, but it's a new Weekend album already. It's like, oh wow, this is awesome. But HBO also pulling up, getting going early. So yeah, very exciting. I like having stuff going on. It's great.
And we're gonna be talking about some movies, some TV, and some music today. If you want to get this the minute it drops, subscribe on youtube.com/nostalgiapod or go on Spotify and follow us there. You can follow the podcast, give us a 5-star rating and review. That's Nostalgia Pod on Spotify. And we also have a new playlist for this year because it's no longer 2021. You can check out all the good music in 2021 if you search Nostalgia Best of 2021. But now we have Nostalgia Best of 2022. We're going to start with, I think, an album that's going to have a few songs to kick off the playlist because The Weeknd dropping the first big album of the year, the follow-up to After Hours, the 2020 smash hit album that was not Grammy nominated at all, with Dawn FM, just announced a week ago. Dave, I mean, where did this come from?
That was the very question, indeed. Album 5 from The Weeknd, but like I didn't feel remotely close to a new Weekend album cycle, due I think in large part to the long tail that Blinding Lights had as the second single off After Hours. But The Weeknd having just this banner 2 years, huge album, huge song, Super Bowl halftime show, and just Blinding Lights sticking around forever, being in the top 10 for a whole year, only song to ever do that. Already the second most streamed song on Spotify, coming up on 3 billion streams there, setting all kinds of chart records and only leaving the chart at all like a few months ago. So I was like, oh, surely The Weeknd, he's chilling. But lest we forget, he hasn't toured this whole time apart from the halftime show. And, like when he did Save My Tears with Ariana, he hasn't really done performing. So he had time to get back in the lab. And, well, hot damn, he did. Dawn FM, really, really coming out of nowhere. Because I didn't really think Take My Breath was like setting us up for something, because that was also several months ago as the lead single back in August. So Dawn FM definitely surprised me, and I feel like it surprised a lot of people just by existing right now.
Yeah. When I saw that he tweeted, be awake at dawn or whatever it was a week ago, I was like, oh, we're getting something. But, my first thought was probably just a single. Maybe he's dropping something of a lead up to an album. No, he's dropping the album. And it's a concept album again. After Hours very famously had the whole Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas vibe to it. The Weeknd famously getting the prosthetics in his face and having the broken noses and the bandages, the whole thing, performing at the halftime show very famously with all of this stuff. So, Dawn FM also getting a concept of, as he described it, being in purgatory and sitting in your car as you're moving towards the light one way or the other. And, you can take the album as a joyous album or as a sad album, depending on how you look at it. But, The Weeknd dons the cover with this old aged face of himself. It seems like he might need to tap himself into these concepts in order to make music that is maybe a little bit more, I don't know, different, maybe push himself outside the box a little bit more. After Hours, I think notably was a move more towards that pop sound, that and that 80s pop sound that really
Yeah.
he fits really well with. So what do you make of this, like just the fact that he's kind of had these concepts for these last two that really stand out?
Yeah, I'd like to see how much he commits to this concept because for the After Hours, he wore the red suit for 2 years. Like it was pretty
Mhm.
easy to follow along with. But it's not like he's in old makeup for the Sacrifice music video that's out
True.
now. So I'm not sure if there's like an aesthetic thing that's easy to latch onto there. But I mean, conceptually, yeah, he's obviously just making better music, more impressive music, more like thoughtful album construction and all that stuff. But he's been at the pop forefront for a long time. Starboy was the real dive into that, but he already had pop success before even that album. So it's not really anything new there. But yeah, he is the leader of the 1980s in mainstream pop revival and doing it arguably the best or among the best because he's doing it beyond just like pastiche or chasing a trend. He's because I think just because the weekend's so adept at melody and so adept at forming these concepts that when songs feel familiar, whether it's harking back to Phil Collins or Michael Jackson, whoever it may be, depending on the song, it still makes a lot of sense because he's just kind of been building up to this for so long. And it is pretty cool to listen to Dawn FM as the sequel to After Hours or just the subsequent record because I do find it quite different, even if like you can make plenty of parallels with the production. I think just there are a lot more stickier radio friendly joints on After Hours, full stop. But that is not necessarily a bad thing that Dawn FM is more like album mode, you know, uh seamless transitions and all that.
Yeah, I think that's the first uh detail of the album that really stood out to me was just how this felt like, obviously the concept of the radio station in the car kind of as the transition point, but it really felt kind of like a power hour at points. That first run from Gasoline through Sacrifice is just boom, boom, boom,
Mm.
seamless transition, and it really kind of keeps you at that like elevated energy, like high energy level. Whereas then when you get a Tale by Quincy and it kind of goes to the Out of Time, here we go again, Best Friends run, it's a little bit more toned down, but again, all kind of sewn together. So there's definitely ideas here that I think are moving away from that radio play, which is kind of funny with the radio, concept or radio s- scheme running through it. But um, he had something he wanted to get across here. Do you feel like he did that effectively in these songs?
Yeah, I think lyrically it's not quite as dark on a personal level. The way we come to associate with the weekend and his hedonistic Lothario nature that we've come to know for so many albums at this point. It's not quite there, although there's still plenty of that. He notably shades Bella Hadid's new significant other on this while acknowledging that he's probably with Angelina Jolie at this time. So he's still being himself. But I think what kind of jumped out to me was if you look at the credits on this, the production is the Blinding Lights production crew. It's Max Martin, Oscar Holter, and who can blame him? Again, given the massive success of Blinding Lights, and yet it's not like what you associate necessarily with Max Martin. This is melodic math, pop perfection. This guy makes pop music in the lab for rapid consumption. It's not that kind of music, and yet it's from the people that you expect to give you that. And I think that speaks a long way with the weekend really having a clear vision of what kind of music he's trying to deliver. And I think for me, there is a sameness to that production. I think that's hard to deny. Like there was a viral thing on Twitter about like you can kind of like mix and mash a lot of the loops on the production side of things for the first half of that album, and it feels very familiar. I'd imagine the beats per minute is nearly identical, but it all still seems to work because it still has that melody. It still has, I think, The Weeknd trying to refine his lyrics to a certain sense. And yeah, do I necessarily want to be in The Weeknd's vision of purgatory more than that like 5 song run on After Hours? No, I don't think so. But I you'd still admire the work.
No, absolutely. I think there's a lot here to like, and you do get a variety of songs. I think, like you mentioned, some of them can sound samey. That BPM and that run I mentioned in the beginning
Mm.
probably is very close together, and then you kind of get back to it near the end. But I think there's like a spectrum here of the slower toned down R&B with the more pop R&B songs at the beginning. And a song like Less Than Zero kind of feels like something in the middle of those two, right? Where
Mm.
it's upbeat, but it's still a little bit more toned back and softer. And I think I really enjoyed this. There's a couple of moments that left me just a little like head scratching, confused. I don't know if all of the like stories necessarily were things that I needed in there.
Mm.
Jim Carrey specifically at the end, I was like, okay, like just totally weird and out there, but also something Abel probably knew was going to kind of come across that way. Um,
Yeah. His
but
apparently dear friend and neighbor, Jim Carrey.
I mean, is he from Canada? The Weekend originally?
Of course, yeah, he's from the
Yeah.
Six, like Drake.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Jim Carrey, notably another famous Canadian star. So
Yeah.
maybe they're just boys that way. I don't know. Why don't we talk about the songs that stood out most to you? What were the tracks that grabbed you right away?
Yeah, so I'd say Gasoline, track 2 stood out to me just for the vocals. Kind of like pitched around there, pretty fun. Take My Breath, notably a different version of what we're used to. This is the album version of the song, not the single. So there's a lot more like protracted intro and outro on this version. I think overall, Take My Breath, pretty good. It was
Mm.
again kind of funny to have that song come out still in the wake of Blinding Lights domination, but uh, I think that's probably like the glitziest song here.
Yeah.
And then Sacrifice, which got the first music video produced by Swedish House Mafia, of which The Weeknd just did a song with them as well. I think that chorus from The Weeknd is really, really
Mhm.
dynamite, really catchy. Yeah, but I think there's a lot of good moments too. Like really awesome to see Tyler the Creator on this album. On Here We Go Again, my 2020 album of the year meets my 2021 album of the year. Of course, that's the record where you have the shade at Bella Hadid, of course, which I actually think was some pretty savage lines. You ended up with someone so basic, faceless, someone take your pictures and frame it. And my new girl, she a movie star. Not holding anything back. I respect it.
I didn't necessarily love that song, but Tyler is always like a welcome presence, and I feel like
Yeah.
he's on that feature run where he's just always coming in and sounding uh inspired. So I
And
appreciated hearing
yeah,
that.
it also wasn't like a Tyler like rapping his ass off like with like really fast flow type of verse, which we've got a lot of recently. It was a little more restrained about signing that prenup and whatnot. So I think it still
Yeah.
works, but yeah, it's not. It wasn't my favorite song on the album, but I think it's still notable.
I agree with you on that. That beginning run that I mentioned. Take My Breath just is such a dynamite. Fourth track on this album. I went back and listened to it like two or three times just because it really that transition from How Do I Make You Love Me, kind of get those like Eye of the
Yeah,
Tiger like guitars, and then it just like brings in the synths, and it's like, whoo, okay, here we go. And then yeah, transitioning from Take My Breath to Sacrifice, again, awesome transition. You mentioned the chorus on that is super sticky. Really, those three. How Do I Make You Love Me, Take My Breath, and Sacrifice stood out.
yeah.
Gasoline. You mentioned the vocals on it. I didn't totally work for me, but I appreciate he's going for something a little different on it. Um, Now, in that like slow run, what did you think of like a song like Best Friends? Because I didn't like it on first listen, but running it back, it stood out to me on second
No,
listen.
yeah, I like Best Friends. I just like it lyrically,
Mhm.
in the wake of Euphoria returning to HBO. Uh, you don't want to have sex as friends no more. I'm like, wow, yeah, this is the correct vibe right now. And
Yeah.
you mentioned how do I make you love me? Also, I think a really impressive vocal performance from the weekend, and that's really why I started thinking like, oh, production wise, this is really just the uh, Dawn FM is really just the logical landing place for where the weekend has been growing from a production side of things. Of course, making a few songs with Daft Punk back on Starboy, making a one-off single with Gesaffelstein, you know,
Mhm.
and now just really going all out. And yeah, you got Calvin Harris on here, you got Swedish House Mafia on here. Really, still a Max Martin joint, but it still feels like the natural, evolution, which is really
Yeah.
cool.
You mentioned Swedish House Mafia before, rumored to be headlining Coachella. Already announced they're doing a comeback, so
Right.
excited to see whatever we get from them. We'll be covering that. You also mentioned the "I Heard You're Married" with Calvin Harris. You got a Lil Wayne feature on that. I mean, what? Like that was one of those moments where I was like, didn't need this. I don't really
Yeah.
want to hear much from Wayne anymore. I don't
No,
know.
I don't. I don't. Some people say he's on the comeback trail, but I'm just not interested. Uh yeah, yeah. I think that end, like the Jim Carrey outro is pretty memorable at least. And
Memorable
I
for sure.
but I actually feel like my favorite part there at the end is Every Angel is Terrifying, which is essentially just this radio ad fitting the motif, the exotic, bizarre, and beautiful world of afterlife. I thought it was very convincing advertisement.
Yeah, thought that was pretty good. Um, yeah, overall, really pleased with this, and I feel like even though it probably doesn't reach the highs of After Hours for me, just I love the direction he's going in. He just feels super inspired and really
Yeah.
in his bag right now. So
Still only 31 years old too, man. It's you gotta hope he wants to keep working. It's really exciting, but he's announced that there's going to be a tour supporting this and also supporting After Hours because he had to postpone the After Hours tour a few times. So
mm,
I'm definitely interested in seeing that stadium tour just because he's really feeling himself these days and also delivering with the music at the end of the day too. So really exciting stuff.
yeah, and pretty much every place that's reviewed this has given it like high marks, 8 of 10s,
Yeah.
4 or 5 stars, 5 of 5, that sort of thing. This is going to get a lot of play, and it was being streamed relentlessly over the weekend. So
Mhm.
um, we'll be adding a few songs to our Nostalgia Best of 2022 playlist. Why don't we move on, Dave? Because you mentioned Euphoria is back, but first let's talk about another show that's back. First time in a few years, Righteous
Mhm.
Gemstones
Oh yeah.
returns. It premiered in September of 2019. How many episodes of that first season was it, like
Nine, I
eight,
think.
nine?
Yeah.
And I think pretty much we were like it had ups and downs throughout the season, but overall we really enjoyed the ride with it. Obviously, sitting with comic geniuses like Danny McBride, Adam Devine, Edie Patterson, I think was a clear standout from the
Oh
season.
yeah.
John Goodman, of course, always a welcome presence on screen. Lot to like there. Um, you get Walton Goggins and Danny McBride teaming up since was the vice principals, and
Mhm.
um, that was a good back and forth between them. Season two, two 3 years later now, two and a
Yeah.
few months. But what did you think of this premiere last night? You get 2 episodes.
Yeah, just happy to have the show back because I think the overall premise, the overall concept of the show is just really appealing for a comedy show. It still makes sense, if there's that creative triforce of David Gordon Green, Jody Hill, and Danny McBride, eastbound and down to vice principals to righteous gemstones. It's a really self-aware show that still doesn't shy away from some of that classic Danny McBride raw humor that you expect from him, and just seeing the lampooning of the grifters that are televangelists. It's just really smart, but also really fun to be with. We kind of got this subject matter a little bit with the Eyes of Tammy Faye in this past fall, a movie that is successful in some manner and less so in others. But I feel like Gemstones just there's just so much room for each member of the ensemble to just have meaningful arcs, or at the very least, just be really funny. to be with. That I just think it's really fun.
Yeah, I agree. The concept of it, there's so much meat on that bone, and just if you come for just the absurd mega church performances and gimmicks that they come up with and how ridiculous that is, or you actually stay for these uh the infighting, the family infighting, and
Right.
the like dumb succession almost like aspect
Yeah.
of the show. It's really enjoyable to be with these characters. Danny McBride's a actor who it can be hit or miss for me. I think sometimes he can be like so over the top that it's like I don't really love his shtick, and then sometimes he can tone it back a little bit, and it really works well. And I feel like he finds a really good sweet spot, especially in these first two episodes of season two, where he's ludicrous and ridiculous. Him talking to his oldest son about his younger son, uh, finding himself and jerking off, and how his older son has to talk to him about it, explaining it. Just hilarious, and it feels like he really, at least for me, really finds the sweet spot in this show. Especially in season two so far, I've really enjoyed him. What aspects of the premiere, the first two episodes of the season, have really caught you or stood out to you?
Well, I think conflict that's being established with a journalist who has a problem with televangelists and wants to expose the hypocrisy, played by Jason Schwartzman. And that's a really smart conflict to insert here. And I think it might have a good use with the audience where you just keep exposing why these are bad people that we just happen to like being with because they're all funny and they do stupid shit. But exposing why they're also bad, and doing it in a meaningful way, if that's where it goes, gives the Righteous Gemstones a place to kind of like level up his commentary beyond just the obvious lampooning. So I'm curious to see where those through lines go because I know the ensemble stuff will be pretty consistent.
Yeah, I'm excited to see where that goes too. It it seems like from what we saw at the end, I'm interested to see is Schwartzman going to be in this? Because
Yeah, he had guest actor credit after the first episode, so it doesn't seem like it's going to be the whole
yeah,
season. I mean, you also have Goodman getting in that fight, which I have to imagine is going to be used against him down the line, given what happened to the other preacher that they set up with the beginning of the premiere. So they're setting up all these threads, and maybe Schwartzman's just kind of part of it, the way like Eric Andre seemingly is also kind of part of it this time.
yeah. Well, at the end of the second episode, they go to that house and they see all the blood, and
Hmm.
it seems like Schwartzman might be dead at this point, which would be too bad if he's really just like a few scenes and he's done. I imagine that might be something to throw us off the scent a little bit, because to get him for two episodes only would be like a bit surprising. It feels like. Um, I love seeing Eric Andre pop in. I thought he was absolutely hilarious in this, and we talked about how his stand up was something that was a bit hard for us to get into at
Yeah,
points, but I thought the way he played his role as the listen, whatever his
yeah,
name is, Glendon Listen.
the West Coast version of the Gemstones, basically.
Yeah, I thought that was, or Lyle Listen, that's what it was was really well done. And uh, I'm interested to see how he comes back into the fold of this. 'Cause I don't think he's going to be someone that's just a few episodes and then done for this season at least.
Yeah, honestly, it's per Eric Andre standards, it's a bit restrained,
Yeah,
but it still seemed to fit in.
absolutely. Yeah, I think you also mentioned Eric Roberts here, and it's not. I feel like I've seen him in so many things. He's always kind of been like a that guy in a lot of things, to me at least. And I had never seen him perform like this in a lot of the things I feel like I've seen him. He's been kind of like the smoldering villain, or like smoldering like other guy to like a love interest or something like that. He
Mhm.
was like so wildly like silly and absurdist in this. I think he's really having a lot of fun, just kind of letting himself go out there and be out there.
Yeah.
Um, another another aspect of the show that I find really interesting, and I don't know if you noticed this, but Evie's husband, first of all, he might be like my favorite like big character in the show. Him like drinking the glass of milk out of a wine glass at family dinner is just absolutely ridiculous to me. I just like burst out laughing when I saw it. He was like swishing it around too, which I just thought was so stupid. But then also like Edie and him ride up in a golf cart and he's like holding on to the emergency bar. It's like it's so dumb. But then when in the second episode when the three gemstone siblings are about to go confront the reporter and
Mhm.
he's like, "Oh, am I going to come with?" He was like on the phone like with I feel like either like talking to somebody or trying to like record them or something. That really like stood out to me. I feel like he
Mm,
might be pulled into the fold here because it also seemed like Cassidy Freeman, who plays Danny McBride's wife Amber,
right.
it seems like she's getting a little bit more shine this season
Yeah.
too. So they might be pulling some of these tertiary characters in more.
Yeah, I'd also like to see what Skylar
Mm,
Gisando has up, what they have him up to as McBride's oldest. Obviously, he's been on the rise, big part in Licorice Pizza recently, so very charming in that movie. So he has, a bit of plot in season one, although it's not like I think the best part about the show or anything. So I'm curious to see what happens that because he's in the family fold right now, right? Obviously, it's a
yeah.
huge change from the first season.
By the way, I just want to say his name is Tim Baltz, the character who plays BJ, Judy's
Mm,
husband. And probably my favorite like joke of the whole thing was them talking about how they got married at Disney World
yeah,
and had Prince Eric officiate. Couldn't even get an A level, legendary or
Mickey
whatever.
fucking Mouse.
Fuck Mickey Mouse. Hilarious. Just so good. The show is great. The writing's great. I'm really excited to see where it goes. So we'll be checking back in with Gemstones as the season wraps up. But let's get to what we've all been really looking forward to with HBO. Euphoria returning for season 2. We get the Rue episode and they
Jules.
only did 2, yeah, and Jules. They just did
Yeah.
Rue and Jules, I think, over the pandemic. Was that 2 years ago now? That wasn't last year,
Uh,
was it?
that was 2021.
Wow. Had to be
Yeah.
yeah,
Right. Yeah, because
I think so.
Euphoria was pandemic delayed. The finale was August 2019, and the interim, Sam Levinson made the two Euphoria specials, which are really minimalist, central rule,
Mhm.
Rue and Jules, and he also, of course, made Malcolm and Marie for Netflix with Zendaya as well.
Right.
In the interim because he wanted to work in a way he could, and he just couldn't make Euphoria until they could shoot it in a safer manner. But judging by the premiere, they didn't hold anything back. You have that New Year's Eve house party, which is as dense as it gets for a house party on screen. So it seems like they're back, and I saw this point out in review. I didn't realize this because again, it's been a while since we saw Euphoria. I actually read some like recaps just to remember like some plot beats, just to make sure I had everything down. But Euphoria season one ends in its story around like winter formal time at that high school. The
Right.
specials that we got in the interim took place around Christmas Eve, and this premiere is taking place at New Year's Eve. Obviously, it's a New Year's Eve party as their core setting. So not a lot of time has actually passed in the sake of the show, even though a lot of time has actually passed in the real world. And
Yeah.
I'm curious to see what Storm Reed, Rue's sister, uh, comes across as, because Storm Reed was quite young. I think she's a bit more of a teenager now. It'll probably be noticeable that she's definitely not the same age anymore. We didn't see her in the premiere, so we'll see about that. But it's been a long time for Euphoria, but I'm definitely happy HBO didn't hold anything back and got the show rolling.
Yeah, it's been a long time, but the show has not missed a beat. Because I thought this premiere episode of season 2 was really gripping and, similar to Gemstone, starting off with a flashback sequence to start the season. You see basically Fez's whole history, Fezco's upbringing, and
Mhm.
um, it, really, really brutal and violent um, history of his life, and being thrust into big brotherhood, then into parenthood, basically, of his younger brother Ashtray. Um, really, really quickly, and just I thought that was a really great choice to start the season, especially as you kind of bookend the episode with Fezco choosing to uh, throw hands with, I guess not even throw hands, really just assault Nate
Beat down.
at the party. But uh, yeah, I was so impressed with just how this
Mhm.
episode felt like it moved from one tense and gripping situation to another and just kind of like kept this level of anxiety throughout the
Yeah.
whole episode. How about you?
Yeah, totally. I think, when you think of what Euphoria is, there's a lot of like key touchstones that made the show really stand out and succeed in 2019. I think 2019 is a, really strong year for television, and Euphoria was a big part of that. You think of the lighting, the neon lighting that characters are constantly cast in. Even something as simple as like Jules having like crazy detailed eye makeup constantly. There's an aesthetic to the show. And from a structure standpoint, you have the cold open centering around one single character featuring Rue voiceover. And Fez did not get a cold open in season one. Fez became a very popular character through the course of season one in real life. Thus, I'm sure that had a big part in motivating Levinson to flesh him out even more and to deliver on that cold open right away for Fez in the premiere, really choice. And then also to have, I think something people are going to start shipping and really love with his conversation with Lexi on the couch. And then at the end, of course, him not backing down from Nate, fulfilling what he said to his face and just beating the living pulp out of him at the end. A completely satisfying episode for Fez, a character that just really became if the most popular, if not the most popular character on the show in season one. It was an awesome example of like fan service meets the show being what it's always been, and also just kind of making sense as a premiere to kick off a new season of the show. I was quite impressed from everything with Fez, but in general, I think the whole ensemble is served, I think, just well enough for a reintroduction that this premiere basically is.
Yeah, completely agree. Fez as a character, clear standout and fan favorite from season one. Um, I thought he was just fantastic in this episode, and seeing the multitudes of him. Right, not only him dealing with this really intense and scary drug dealer situation where he's basically stuck up at gunpoint.
Mhm.
With Rue and his younger brother, and just trying to like navigate that as best he could, to having this very like charming conversation with Lexi on the couch, like you mentioned, and then obviously with the beatdown at the end. He gets to do a lot in this episode. Some good minutes for Fez. What other moments of the episode did you find yourself most invested in, though? I'd say for myself, the all the stuff with Rue and Jules actually kind of took a back seat, and I
Yeah,
found myself
totally.
a lot more engaged with the other storylines going on.
Yeah, I mean, you have Kazi, Sydney Sweeney, and
Mhm.
Nate, Jacob Elordi kind of linking up with circumstantially on the way to the party. And whether it's alcohol induced or not, beginning to hook up. And then there's this tension of is Maddie, is Alexa Demi gonna find out? Yes, she's not really dating Nate right now, but Kazi's her best friend. You can't do that. And they both know they can't do that, but you know how it goes. So that tension in the bathroom, I think we all saw that coming. They're gonna hide in the bathtub when they realized the window wasn't gonna work. But the way they maintain that tension, especially with the phone, and then actually having the phone go off and having Maddie not even like check who it is, doesn't give a fuck. But I thought it was all handled really well. And I think kind of a good use of Nate, because I think Nate can be a bit cliched in his just villainy, and like he's a big part of so much of like the conflict and the plot in season one that I think can be a little tough to grapple with at times, because I just feel like it was his actions often kind of uh, venture on like the beyond believability at times. But I think the way that he was used here in kind of like a triangle with Cassie and Maddie, and like the stuff with Cassie is completely new. Uh, you just amazing tension, right? You have Algie Smith coming into. It would be a betrayal to his best friend as well if he found out he was with Cassie. Like it's this whole thing, right? And you have to imagine there we might see this played out further in the rest
Sure.
of the season. But yeah, I thought that was a nice thing because it's kind of like it's built up from the past season, right? All this tension, all these character relationships, and just see something that could be a nuclear bomb about to explode in this friendship group, and then it doesn't blow up. I thought it was all done well.
Yeah, and you see, I think Levinson's ability to really build tension expertly as it cuts between, Lexi knocking on the door of the
Yeah,
bathroom and trying, or sorry, Maddie knocking on the door of the bathroom, trying to like get Nate to come out and like, are you taking a shit in there? And Sydney Sweeney getting all teary eyed and worried. That's my best friend. And then it cuts to Rue sitting on the floor, almost going into cardiac arrest, having the person that she's on the floor with crush up Adderall and give it to
yeah.
her, and
Dominic
that
Fike,
scene.
baby.
Yeah, and then you have I forgot what was the other part they were cutting to. Was it Jules at the party or
Jules and
or
Kat, I think, just
yeah,
like dancing and
Jules and
drinking and
Kat.
stuff, talking.
Yeah, and Nate kind of like walking through or being in the bathroom and like freaking out, like cutting back and forth between all this, just really like building that anxiety until finally like he opens the door and Rue's heart kind of starts up again. It's really really well done. I thought that was great. I also loved the shot of Nate at the party, looking through the like decoration at the house or whatever, where he's like
Yeah.
looks to the right and there's Fez, looks straight ahead and there's Jules, looks to the left. I think it was Maddie dancing with that guy, and just kind of like all these aspects of his life that are um, maybe not going the way he want to, or tense in some way. That was really really well done. What else stood out to you about the
Uh,
episode?
yeah, I mean, you have other trademarks too, right? Like soundtrack, key soundtrack drops is a big thing about Euphoria. I really remember Megan the Stallion's Cocky AF from her Tina Snow mixtape being used in Euphoria season one before Megan had completely gone mainstream. This time around, it's a lot more noticeable stuff, right? It's Tupac hit him up in the car, Rue, you know, saying Biggie Smalls and Junior Mafia are mark ass bitches. It's really funny to hear Zendaya say that. And then at the party, it's Biggie, Hypnotize, and DMX. It's like, I don't know how accurate that is for some
Right.
Gen Z high school kids to be listening to Biggie and
Yeah.
DMX. I wish it was because, I mean, that's better party music than fucking Little Baby, but I know that's what they're really listening to.
Yeah, that was something that stood out to me. First of all, the needle drops were fantastic and I really enjoyed them. But I was kind of asking myself, and this was pointed out online, especially on Twitter, like, are these kids really going to be listening to this music? I mean, I hope so for this next generation, but I would doubt that would be what would be played at this New Year's Eve party necessarily. Um, also just Fez having Ashtray start up the car and say, have the car running.
Yeah. You knew it was
Then
happening after that.
totally. But I was also, I saw the parking situation there. I don't know how easily Ashtray's going to be able to
Mm,
get out of that parking situation. It's a lot of like, hey, can you move your car for me, man?
yeah.
Like,
In general, I was gonna say it's a lot of people driving to a
yes.
drinking event. To be honest, let's wise up here a little bit.
Yeah, let's
Um,
get some Ubers going.
well, and the other thing too is like there was a few moments when I was like, "You're not gonna kill someone like this, right?" Like Sydney Sweeney could have easily died and flown through the windshield because she didn't have her seatbelt on when they were going 100 miles an hour. I was like, that would be wild. And then the other hand, I was like, is Fez gonna literally kill Nate right now? Because I was
I felt so
watching.
too.
I like stood up when I was watching because I was very satisfied to watch this happen, and I was like, oh wow, that would take some balls too to do that. In general, I thought the whole episode just looked amazing, and apparently, Levinson and HBO and everyone they shot this on film this time around, 35 millimeter film specifically.
Looked great.
They went to Kodak and had them remake Ectochrome 35 millimeter film, which is a film stock that they stopped making in the 2000s. And the Euphoria team basically got Kodak to make a few thousand rolls of a retired film stock to make this show. And it goes a long way because the show looks fucking fantastic and it looks like a movie. And you love to see it.
Absolutely. Super pumped for Euphoria. I'm interested to see how some of the new characters
Yeah.
are brought into the show. Right now there's a lot of mouths to feed. So bringing in more characters to get time. I mean, I can't
Right.
imagine you're going to bring in They brought in, I think, three people who are going to be main cast: Dominic Fike, Austin Abrams, and Javon Walton. So I don't know. We'll see.
Right. Yeah. Some of the advanced reviews said that it seems like Cat is going to be getting a bit of the short shrift, relatively speaking, to the rest of the ensemble. Um, I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens with Jules as well, because you had a lot of Jules' like internal thoughts on her life, and transitioning and just her sexuality and her mental health and all that in the special that came out post season one. It wasn't actually at the forefront as much in season one. On the other hand, season one wasn't like waving a flag and parading around the fact that you have a queer relationship at the center of the show, just in the show. So Euphoria has an intelligent view of this sort of thing. So I'm curious to see what the future uh, leads for that as well.
Absolutely. We'll be talking about Euphoria as the season wraps up. You should be watching it as well. But Dave, let's jump from HBO to Amazon, where they dropped their newest film starring Ben Affleck and Ty Sheridan, The Tender Bar, based off of the novel of I believe it's novel the same name, right?
Yeah, actually, I think it's
Yes, from
more of a
J.R.
memoir than
Moore.
than a novel from the real life J.R. Maringer,
Right. Yeah.
Moringer, however you say it.
And you know, it, I don't know. Not having read his memoir, I don't know if this recounts the whole of the book or not. It seems like this really focuses on young Jr's life with his mom and uncle and his absent or mostly
Mhm.
absent father, and then how he transitions into adulthood and finds his career and
Right.
peace in his life in some sense. And you know, as much as I think there's some really warm moments in this, some really nice and satisfying uh, stretches in this, I don't know if this had a enough going on to really hold my interest, and I think it really feels just a tad bit like dull at points. And
Mm.
we talked about this with George Clooney in his last movie.
The,
Of
the
course,
Midnight Sky on
yes,
Netflix,
thank you
sci-fi
on
film
Netflix.
that he also starred in.
Which I think there were points of that also had the same problem where it felt like there's some serious lulls in that film and can feel a bit like this is dragging a bit. So I'm wondering if this is something with what Clooney goes for in his direction or not. But I'm wondering, did you have the same experience where you just kind of felt a bit bored by this at points?
Yeah, well, I mean, Clooney just doesn't have an amazing track record as a filmmaker. He's a far cry from Ben Affleck, you know. Ben's a way better director at this point. Uh, and I just maybe with a more experienced, more capable hand, the Tender Bar could be something a little more. Um, because what you get is it's kind of a segmented film with flashbacks and stuff. You have some use of narration, but not an overwhelming amount of it, which kind of came across as strange to me. You have a lot of underserved plot points because once Jr. becomes a young adult, played by Ty Sheridan, it's just a lot of like pots in the fire that just don't come to a boil correctly. And you kind of get away from the best part about the film, which is everything at the bar, specifically everything with his uncle, played by Ben Affleck. So I just feel like it's kind of a weak screenplay, and William Monahan, is a capable, accomplished screenwriter, was behind the screenplay, but it was just a kind of too messy, I think, to rise above because like you said, there's not like actually a lot going on, but there could be a lot going on because thematically you have all these rich, familiar yet potent themes of absent fathers and coming of age and struggling to make something of your life with limited means and all these really simple things to grasp, and yet it's Tender Bar is quite surface level with just about everything. So yeah, I was pretty disappointed by it. I mean, but I also felt like all the Affleck stuff was like really watchable and solid.
Yeah, I think that was my main takeaway was Affleck just in general shines in this, and I think he's on a really good run recently where I feel like every time he
Yeah,
pops up or he's doing something, it's just he just seems to be in a good place acting wise. You know, we saw him in the last duel, just
amazing in the last duel.
being just absolutely chewing on every single scene to the bone. So he's not to that level in this, but I think he's just really enjoying himself, which is nice to see. Um, what do you think of Ty Sheridan's performance in this?
I thought he's all right. I give Ty a lot of credit, honestly, for trying to take on some more adult themes. Post Ready Player One, he was also in Paul Schrader's Card Counter last fall in a supporting role. So he definitely is trying to pick better roles, and I don't really think lay much of the blame with the film at his feet at all. I just think he tried to make the best of the material, but like some of the stuff, like when he has to do all the stuff with his on again, off again girlfriend, I'm like,
Oh, brutal.
this is not good. You know, it's just they're just weak scenes, you know, and like he can't do anything about it. And everything at Yale in general is just kind of blah, kind of surface level, going through the motion stuff. I wish if the screenplay was a little different, if the direction was a little different, you could have maybe skipped some of that stuff and just tried to, I don't know, big picture a little bit versus trying to bullet point the storytelling. I don't know, but I thought Ty was okay.
Yeah, I thought he was okay. I feel like I've never been really blown away by him in a movie.
No,
Maybe the card counter would change my mind with that. I'm not sure, but um, I agree. I think it's almost like they spend so much time establishing what his childhood was like in this movie. You know, you really get like probably 30 to 40 minutes of that. Movie's only 100 or yeah 104 minutes long. That by the time you really get to Yale, you have a couple more flashbacks. The yada yada, a lot of it focus a lot on the relationship, on again off again relationship, um, and I think there were so many aspects of his childhood that could have been served better if they had spent a little bit more time. I feel like Christopher Lloyd is just kind of like not fully realized as a character. He's kind of like sitting there as like the old grumpy grandpa. He has the nice moment where he takes him to the school function, but then kind of is sidelined again. It's like it was this just was are we supposed to take from that this guy really had this like one nice moment with him and then was just kind of like there. You know, he dies at some point. It's just kind of like not mentioned. So like, what do we
mm,
make of that? Affleck really in that father role, but it shines a lot more when he's behind the bar and not necessarily being parental, but more so like that like friendly neighborhood like Spider-Man guiding him along type guy.
yeah, mhm,
It's just really like strange how there's certain aspects that feel really good. I liked a lot of the stuff when you know he goes for the interview with the New York Times and gets his first was it like byline on and the Times or something like that, and I think that's really heartwarming. And then when he has the confrontation with his father when he's older, I thought that was pretty satisfying, although also kind of yada yada. I felt like
yeah.
rushed.
I felt the father was just a kind of uneven presence because he's like absent from so much of the movie. But yeah, I feel like the sentimentality of the movie is pretty solid. It's just the formulaic nature of the rest of it that like gets in the
Right.
way.
Yeah, and even the stuff with his mom, it's obvious how much he loves and adores her and gives her so much credit. And the scenes that you kind of get the payoff for that, nothing is really said between them other than like, "You look great,
Yeah,
mom. You're perfect. You're wonderful." And I was like, I need a little bit more here. I don't know.
yeah. I think my favorite stuff was one of the young Jr. scenes where Ben Affleck is picking up his boys to go bowling, and they're
Yeah,
just whipping the Cadillac. Affleck's hair looks amazing, and they actually go like candlestick bowling. That was really fun. And then I think my other favorite part would be that really brief like dream sequence where you have Ty Sheridan seeing his younger self, Daniel Ranieri, the kid, telling him of, why don't you wake up and wait 20 years so you can tell everyone how good you could have been. I was like, oh, that's actually like a really like, I think, on the nose yet still bright way to come get that theme home. It was just kind of funny hearing the kid say that.
yeah, I agree that that was pretty well done. I think overall this movie was a bit disappointing for me, but there's some stuff to like. Um, do you think this will get any award recognition?
Well, Affleck was nominated for a supporting actor Golden Globe. The Golden Globes did just happen, not televised. You can see who won, so that's something. But I don't think you're going to see anything else really from this. But shout out Ben, he was pretty good in this. Um,
Not even his best supporting role of the year.
no, of course not. He's so good in Last Duel. I
Yeah.
I do want to say though, Ty Sheridan's next one of his next movies is quite interesting. This was announced at the end of 2020. They haven't started filming it yet, but it's an adaptation of The Things They Carried, the Vietnam War novel, and it has this. It was already packaged and sold, and it has this huge ensemble cast: Ty Sheridan, Tom Hardy, Stephen James, Bill Skarsgård, Pete Davidson, Ashton Sanders, and Moises Arias. Just kind of a loaded war movie squad sound
Yeah.
by the sound of it, and that's a really famous, well liked book about Vietnam. So if they do make that movie, I'm sure they were waiting out the pandemic a little bit. We'll see what ties up to in that. But yeah, this
That is
is
pretty interesting.
yeah, yeah for sure. I mean, Tom Hardy in war, losing his mind, wearing a mask. Sounds right up his alley.
Check out the Tender Bar on Amazon Prime. But Dave, we were able to watch Red Rocket, a bit of a surprise film. That's getting some recognition and some good reviews. Um, I think what maybe surprised me most about this is there's like not there's no one really big attached to this movie, and this is I think seriously one of those like art house movies that kind of pops up, and it's not art house in the way that you'd expect. Like I think when you think about art house, you kind of think of like weird choices or very specific styles. While there's certainly I think some specific choices that are made here, uh, this is just like a really I think interesting story. Unconventional or maybe just a story that isn't really explored a lot.
Yeah.
And you get Simon Rex as the star of this with I think someone that's a breakout star in the making, Susanna Sun, um, playing alongside him. And I just was like totally blown away by everything with them on screen in this. As you got to check this out, what was just your initial reaction to it?
So I was not really surprised about this because this makes sense as the next Sean Baker movie. Sean Baker's whole thing, his whole vision about being a indie filmmaker in every sense. He makes really tightly budgeted films as an independent filmmaker. But his big thing is that he likes to work with non-professionals. He likes to work with people that aren't too famous. And once in a while, he'll bring someone in. His last film, The Florida Project, which I really loved, featured Willem Dafoe, who did get a supporting actor Oscar nomination. And he had people offering agencies, and talent and agents offering more well-known talent for his next film, just because people want to work with Baker. But he didn't want to take people too famous, and he was kind of going out of his way to keep doing what he's always been, which is kind of highlighting like these like slices of America, and specifically his last three films with Red Rocket, The Florida Project, and Tangerine, zeroing in on sex work and where that fits in with people living and trying to make ends meet. That's been his thing right now. And he says that he actually cast Susanna San because him and his wife saw her in the lobby of the ArcLight Hollywood, and they physically were like, "That is someone we want to cast. That's a star." And they hit her up 2 years later to make this. And I was like, "Yeah, that sounds exactly like Sean Baker to me." And then you actually watch the film, and it has again a lot of his aesthetics and vision and point of view. Like I said, the sex work feel, but also like his like aesthetic of like really colorful exteriors and stuff, shooting on film. Like it's all the trademarks that he's, I think, really kind of blown up with on like film Twitter and like indie film fans and stuff the last 10 years. And uh, at the center of it, of course, you have Simon Rex. No one would have seen this coming from Simon Rex. So I think hats off to Baker for casting him in the first place and really kind of having that vision again to find his Mikey Saber. The
Yeah.
suitcase pimp character that's so central to the story.
And to give like a brief synopsis, basically, Mikey Saber, as you mentioned, this former porn star, went to LA, did a bunch of films, now is returning to his hometown in Texas City.
Yeah,
Um,
Gulf
a-
Coast, Texas.
and really just has nowhere to go, very little money. Tries to shack back up with his ex-wife, and her mother, or I guess maybe still wife, but
Yeah, estranged. Yeah.
estranged, and uh, starts a relationship with her again, or at least a sexual relationship with her again, and finds Rayleigh, Strawberry, as she's come
Mm.
to known in the movie,
Donut
this
hole.
this 17-year-old uh, girl who is, I think, absolutely stunning and just totally catches his eye. And he starts envisioning, them doing couple scenes like he used to do with his estranged wife to become famous in uh, the porn industry again. And they start a relationship, and it kind of then follows his relationship with her and just his life. Um, Man, I thought Simon Rex. So I feel like I've only seen maybe like one other thing, if that, was just really, really good in this and really magnetic. And
Yeah,
the film doesn't really work if he's not good, because you could totally look at this person and just be like, that's a complete scumbag who I don't ever want to,
right.
spend time with. And he's just, I think, even though obviously a jerk and not a very well put together person, really magnetic still, and that helps drive the plot along.
Yeah, I think that that's the key thing, right? And it speaks to the script and the performance that you have this central character that's really self-absorbed, really narcissistic, really selfish, but also really charismatic and kind of fun to be with.
Yeah.
And it's a great challenge for the audience because the movie doesn't gloss him up and turn his life around and make and have him atone and make him a better man by the end. It does quite the opposite. He basically
Hmm.
devolves even further once he gets a little semblance of success and a foundation under him again. And when you're watching all that happen, you're kind of rooting against it because you're like, oh, we wanted to see you redeem yourself and you didn't do
Yep.
it.
100%. And in fact, I think he actually devolves as the movie goes on. You see his friendship with Lonnie, and Lonnie being this person who I think is very like sweet at the center of it, but also seems like, is like stealing valor and
Yeah.
uh, pretty messed up stuff. Um, Anyways,
Mhm.
then you see like the car accident, and it really just like is this huge, I think huge, but also like not super in your face metaphor for uh the way that Mikey uses people. When push comes to shove in these terrible situations, he's always gonna look out for himself, and that's kind of what happens. And Lonnie ends up, you know, becoming very publicly arrested and blamed for this car accident, which technically is his fault, but also I think Mikey could take some responsibility for it, and just not going to happen. That's just kind of like, I think that sums up the movie really well. Um, but also, or at least the character of Mikey really well. But it
Right.
was tough to watch. I felt bad for Lonnie for sure.
Totally. Lonnie also a local piece of casting, non-actor.
Mhm.
Sean Baker just picks out faces. The mom, the grandma, or the Mikey's wife's mom, also a
June.
local. That Baker, I think, saw exiting a porta potty. I think is the story, and he's like, "I think that's our mom." Like, just wild stories. But yeah, I think another notable piece to this is you have interspersed through the story, you have characters kind of watching the lead up to the 2016 election. You see Trump giving some speeches. I believe you listen to Hillary Clinton accepting the nomination, I think. And it's not explicitly stated like anything politically, really, just kind of putting you in a place and seeing these characters kind of take that stuff in. And you can draw some parallels to like thematically what's going on in the characters' lives. And obviously, this is in Texas, so you know where it's largely going in this location. But I liked how like it wasn't like a preachy thing like boo this man, he voted for X kind of thing either. It's just really smarter than something I think kind of obvious like that. Uh, Also, talk about a banger music cue, man. In sync, bye bye bye,
Oh yeah.
and beginning drop, ending drop, cover in the middle,
Mhm.
huge moment. And I think it really just works so well because again, that song's a fucking banger.
It's pretty funny because also I think all five members of NSYNC had to approve its use, so they had to
Yeah,
talk
indie film,
to
man. They don't got no budget for that.
they had to talk to Sean Baker and figure out what this all was about and approve it. That's pretty funny to me, but also definitely well done. You can also listen to Susanna Sun's cover on Spotify, I believe. So
Mm,
check that out. I don't know if we'll be adding it to the playlist, but definitely a worthy listen. This actually touches on something that we, or at least I'll say you, I now have seen this movie but didn't get a chance to talk about it. Licorice Pizza. I think one of the critiques of it has been that the relationship is between a older woman and an adult and a child in the movie,
mhm.
and this technically, is a older man with a 17-year-old at the start of the
Yeah,
film. I think by the time the film ends, she's turned 18.
technically consensual by the
Yeah, I
law.
mean, I think it has been getting some. I don't know if criticism is the right way to put it, but people are noting it. Did that stand out to you, or did
Well,
you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, it doesn't really bother me too much because Mikey's a fucking scumbag. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, no shit. He's like, oh, look at this girl about to turn 18. I'm gonna make her my fucking partner and return me to porn glory. Like, yeah,
Mhm.
it all tracks. Doesn't
Yeah.
mean you have to be okay with it as the viewer of the thing. Like, I don't think the movie's okay with it either. You're watching a scumbag, you know?
Mhm.
Uh, I think Licorice Piece is a lot more nuanced too. We can talk about that later, I think. But best movies of 2021 coming out later this week. Check that out. And yeah, I think. I mean, you have this clearly uh, in her. Uh, it comes across quite consensual. I think the whole thing, and even if there's like a shade of grooming due to the motivations of Mikey, it's certainly unsavory. But I think that's kind of like the point, you know.
Yeah. And you definitely, I think, get a very satisfying, although I think again challenging moment when Mikey gets beat up by Nash's parents, who are obviously also people that I don't think many people would root for, but I think in some way you might want a parent to beat up someone who's doing something like this with a
Yeah.
17-year-old. So uh,
You can't compete with someone who's fucked 1,300 bitches. Like he just, I think so great about Mikey too, right? Like you have all these things where like his self awareness is largely lampooned the whole time, right? He's like talking about how he went up to 100 Instagram followers, or
Mhm.
Paul Walker dies and now he can't be Brian O'Connor in the Fast and the Furious porn spin-offs. He got the revenue cut off. It's like all these moments where it's like this is a guy who like you kind of like watching, but time and time again he just digs his own grave.
Yeah, and I also want to say I think the ending of the movie is really, really well done. Not only the whole final confrontation between
Mm.
is it June? Is she the
June,
drug?
yeah,
Yeah, June,
the
and
drug dealer.
also a local casting, but the drug dealer and her brothers, and then him running to the uh, is the mom is June, I think so, running to her and begging for money, and then running to Strawberry's house and having the daydream about her in the red bikini. I just thought it was all really worked really well to kind of hammer home the
Mm.
story and what the
Yeah,
Baker was trying to get across.
totally. And I think in the awards conversation, Simon Rex definitely fits right into the Adam Sandler position that Sandler had with Uncut Gems when it comes to the Best Actor race, where there's like a performance that a lot of people are really behind, and it's definitely justified, and it's really cool to see as someone who's been in Hollywood but maybe not recognized in this way, and it's just not going to happen from the awards bodies,
Yeah,
the major ones anyway.
no, it's just looking here. It has gotten some nominations at smaller festivals, but
Yeah. Susanna San had a few. She got the breakthrough nomination from Gotham's and supporting actress at Independent Spirit. So that's nice to see too.
yeah. I mean, it'll be interesting to see if this makes either of our lists come later this week. But that is, as Dave mentioned, the second podcast you'll be getting from us this week, which is our best movies of 2021. So stay tuned for that. Dave, any last thoughts on Red Rocket before we wrap up?
Definitely a movie that's worth supporting. It's A24, but it's also Sean Baker, where he's operating on a really tight scale. So this is the kind of film where when people don't see it, it even in any fashion, but they don't see it, like the run gets killed. So definitely try and seek out his other work if you can. I know Tangerine's on Netflix right now, and he
I think
seems to be
Florida Project
rising.
is too.
Yeah, he seems to be rising online, which is cool. You know, he's not a young filmmaker or anything, but definitely try and support indie filmmakers when you can.
So, Dave, outside of our best movies of the year, what do we got for next week?
So I've already seen it, but The Tragedy of Macbeth will be hitting Apple this Friday. I would definitely recommend people check that out. And then we have a lot of actually cool stuff. Second album, long awaited, from Corday coming out. New album from Earl Sweatshirt. Conclusion of HBO's Station 11. The start of HBO's DC Suicide Squad spinoff Peacemaker, starring John Cena. Strong reviews for that show already. And then hopefully we can get to talk about Hamaguchi's Drive My Car, the lauded Japanese film that's been winning Best Film of 2021 at many critics' bodies. That's a movie in slow, limited release, so it's finally in the mix for us. So really happy to dig into that finally.
Stay tuned. Subscribe youtube.com/nostalgiapod. Go to Spotify, give us a 5-star rating, Nostalgia Pod on there, and also follow the new playlist, Nostalgia Best of 2022 on Spotify. We'll see you next week.